We're pretty funny, huh, Beavis?
Yeah.
We should be on TV.
What happens when a TV show crosses paths with a real-life tragedy? In 1993, an episode of Beavis and Butt-Head didn't just offend. It sparked outrage and became linked to a deadly incident. But was the show truly to blame? Or was it just an easy scapegoat? Hey, I'm Kenya Deanna, and I make videos about our favorite cartoons, whether that would be deep dives, hidden meanings, or the episodes that left a mark on our pop culture, much like this one. And today, we're going to be diving into one of the most controversial moments in animation history with the Beavis and Butt-Head episode titled Comedians. This episode was so infamous, it was banned from TV after being tied to a real-life tragedy, and together, we are going to unravel a story of death, deception, censorship, and fire. Yes, indeed, fire. So stick around as we uncover the truth behind this notorious episode and its lasting impact on the show and its legacy. So before we can even get into the Comedians episode, we have to talk about the world that is of Beavis and Butt-Head. Back in March of 1993, Mike Judge introduced us to these two clueless teens on MTV, and it didn't take long for them to make a name for themselves. Their humor was so crude, their antics were so ridiculous, and they were absolutely oblivious to, well, everything, whether that be school, work, basic social skills, you name it. And honestly, that's what made them so funny. They weren't meant to be role models, they were caricatures. They were particularly meant to be an over-the-top exaggeration take on teen apathy and boredom. Mike Judge was really inspired by the disconnection he saw in teenagers at that time and thought, what if I just crank this up to maybe like an 11? And so there we have it. Beavis and Butt-Head were born. Two hilariously clueless guys who became the ultimate satirical reflection of the early 1990s of youth culture. But not everybody was laughing, okay? Their behavior, especially Beavis's obsession with fire, made people so nervous. Parents, teachers, and media watchdogs were constantly up in arms, worried that their kids might take their reckless antics a little bit too seriously. And then came the Comedians episode in 1993. It was, let's just say, the tipping point. This was the moment when the show absolutely crossed a line that would leave a lasting mark on its legacy. And with that being said, let's dive into the infamous Comedians episode. The episode kicks off the way so many Beavis and Butt-Head episodes do, with our dynamic duo slouched on the couch, watching TV, flipping through TV channels. They are as unmotivated as ever until something flashy grabs their attention. A stand-up comedian on stage cracking jokes, and then after, flaunting a lifestyle of luxury and success. You can almost see the gears slowly turning in Butt-Head's brain, but gears just might be a little bit too generous. With a glimpse of dim-witted determination, Butt-Head turns to Beavis and says,
I got an idea.
Yeah.
Before he can even explain, though, Beavis interrupts with his own suggestion, predictably centered on his fiery obsession.
Me too. Let's go over to Stuart's house and burn something.
Now, hold on to that little nugget about Beavis's love for fire. Trust me, this will come back later on. Butt-Head, being Butt-Head, brushes off Beavis's idea and famously calls him a
dumbass,
and lays out his so-called genius plan. And this genius plan is,
let's become one of those stand-up chameleons and make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just like the guy on TV. Why, you might ask? Well, of course, just to be rich and famous. Beavis, in typical Beavis fashion, immediately agrees without a second thought, and they celebrate with their goofy rock star gesture thing that they do, and I love it so much.
Dun, 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 dun.
And after this, they are so ready to conquer the comedy world, or so they think. And their first stop is a local comedy club. They stroll in completely convinced they're on the fast track to fame and fortune. But first, we're treated to one of those classic moments of Beavis and Butt-Head sitting on their couch commenting on MTV music videos. It really is the perfect breather before this misguided journey taking a turn for the absolute worst. As we get back to the main plot, back at the club, the announcer steps up to introduce the next act. It's Butt-Head, but because this is Beavis and Butt-Head, the announcer fumbles his name, calling him
Butthole.
Does Butt-Head care though? Absolutely not. He hops on the stage with full confidence, ready to wow the crowd and become rich and famous. But as expected, it doesn't take long for things to go south. Butt-Head opens with a terrible joke and it of course bombs.
What's green and red and goes 100 miles an hour? A frog in a blender.
He tries another joke and it of course bombs, somehow it being worse.
Okay. Here's one. How do you keep a moron in suspense? I don't know.
Yeah.
The audience sits in stunned silence before they start booing him. Bottles start flying, but does Butt-Head care? Absolutely not. He's just like, this is so cool. I damn near thought that they were gonna start throwing tomatoes at him too. After Butt-Head bombed, the announcer kicks him off stage. So next up we have is Beavis, of course. But by now, the crowd has absolutely had enough. Most of the audience left, leaving Beavis to perform in front of nearly an empty room. His jokes fall flat, so naturally, we know Beavis. He decides to, let's just say, spice things up. This dude gets a stack of newspapers and says he is going to juggle them, but knowing Beavis, he sets them on fire. Yep. There's Beavis's obsession with fire again, front and center. After another music video commentary interlude, we return back to the comedy club and it's in flames. Now, we don't know exactly how this happens, but I mean, come on, the context was there. This is Beavis with fire. Do the math. Standing outside, Beavis and Butt-Head watches the building burn down to the ground, but instead of panicking, they are as clueless, dumb, and dim-witted as ever. Butt-Head scratches his head and mutters,
We should be on TV. How come that club owner dude didn't like us?
then he adds,
Maybe he's stupid.
Not everybody can be cool like us.
Yeah.
that doesn't sum them up perfectly, then I really don't know what does. And just like that, the episode wraps up, fading back into more of their classic music video commentaries. But here's the thing, after watching this episode, I couldn't help but wonder what went so wrong that it got banned. Let's dive into the real life tragedy that followed soon after. So here's where things take a heartbreaking turn. On October 6, 1993, just a month after that infamous Beavis and Butt-Head episode Comedians aired, a tragedy unfolded in Moraine, Ohio. A 5-year-old boy named Austin Mesner was playing with a cigarette lighter at the Hideaway Mobile Home Park. Unfortunately, he accidentally set his bed on fire, which quickly spread and destroyed the trailer. Thankfully, Austin, his mom, Darcy Burke, and her boyfriend made it out safely. But in a devastating twist, Austin's 2-year-old sister, Jessica Matthews, didn't make it. She was caught in the fire while trying to escape and tragically passed away.
Last week, this Ohio blaze left 2-year-old Jessica Matthews dead. The fire was started by her 5-year-old brother.
Now, here's where things get a little bit more complicated. Around that same time, there were reports of 3 other fires in the city and fires in other states, and the media quickly pointed fingers at Beavis and Butt-Head as the cause of it. Thankfully though, none of those other fires resulted in deaths, but the speculation just kept on building up.
In Austin, Texas, 3 more fires were reported, where young arsonists told authorities they got the idea from Beavis and Butt-Head.
And then came Darcy, Austin's mom. She told reporters that her son's obsession with fire had started after watching Beavis and Butt-Head. She claimed that before the show, Austin had never played with matches or lighters.
Week's fire near Dayton, in which the mother of a 5-year-old said her son lit the family's trailer home on fire because he acted out what he saw on Beavis and Butt-Head. The little boy's 2-year-old sister died in that fire.
In an interview, she said that after watching the show, Austin started to think fire was just something fun and harmless. Even the fire chief, Harold Sigler, backed her up, saying Austin's fascination grew after watching Beavis and Butt-Head play with fire on screen.
He was obsessed with Beavis and Butt-Head. Every time that he watched them, he would try to mimic what they'd done to the point where he started playing with matches and a lighter.
This tragic event became a national conversation about the impact of TV shows on kids, and things started to heat up. No pun intended. Fire Chief Sigler even made this chilling statement to the New York Times. When you take a child in their formative years and you get these cartoon characters saying it's fun to play with fire, this is going to stick in that kid's mind and it's going to be with him for a long time. From there, the media blew this whole thing up, and it wasn't even long before MTV, Beavis and Butt-Head's home, was caught in the middle of a massive controversy. People were asking, shouldn't creators be responsible for the impact their content has on young minds? And MTV, feeling the heat of that, had to respond, and they had to respond fast. After all the outrage, MTV had to speak up. Carol Robinson, the senior VP at the time, stepped in and defended the show. She said something like this: Beavis and Butt-Head is made for teenagers and young adults who make up most of its audience. These viewers understand that it's a cartoon and that the crazy antics of these 2 teenage misfits are obviously over the top and shouldn't be copied in real life. Mike Judge, the show's creator, wasn't happy about being blamed either. He shared his frustration, saying, first off, I don't agree with any of that criticism, and I don't take responsibility for any of it. The fire was tragic, obviously, but it had nothing to do with Beavis and Butt-Head. Even with MTV and Judge defending the show, the controversy just kept growing and growing, so much so that the major news channels picked it up too. So, in response, MTV made some pretty big changes. They started adding disclaimers before each episode, warning viewers that Beavis and Butt-Head were not role models and their behavior shouldn't be imitated.
Beavis and Butt-Head are not role models, not even human. They're cartoons. Some of the things they do would cause a person to get hurt, expelled, arrested, possibly deported. To put it another way, don't try this at home.
Beavis and Butt-Head are not real. They are stupid cartoon people completely made up by this Texas guy who we hardly even know. Beavis and Butt-Head are dumb, crude, thoughtless, ugly, sexist, self-destructive fools. But for some reason, the little wiener heads make us laugh.
They even moved the show's time slot from 7 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., thinking it would be better fit with its older teen and adult audience.
Controversial cartoon duo Beavis and Butt-Head are being moved to late night after being blamed by a mother for the death of her 2-year-old daughter.
And perhaps most drastically, they removed all fire-related content from past and future episodes. Remember Beavis's iconic fire, fire, fire chant?
Fire, 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 fire.
That was changed to fire, fire, fire in episodes like Oil Change, Season 5, Episode 34, where Beavis was working on a deep fryer. When it came to the comedians episode, MTV went all out. They edited the episode so heavily, cutting out major scenes, and it barely resembled its original forms. Eventually though, they decided to just lock it away in that infamous MTV vault, and it never aired again. But the fallout didn't just stop at that episode. Several other episodes containing sensitive materials was also pulled, like Way Down Mexico Way Part 2, Heroes, the comedians episode of course, and Incognito. What's funny is that even after the ban on fire related content, the show still found ways to sneak in fire jokes, like in the 1996 movie Beavis and Butt-Head Do America. In the original version of the movie, there's a scene during Beavis and Butt-Head's desert hallucination where Beavis almost says fire, but the line gets cut off or redirected at the last second. It's like the creators were kind of like teasing us, playing with the restrictions they had to work under back then. But if we fast forward to the 2022 revival, Beavis' obsession with fire is fully back.
Fire! 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 Fire!
Hello, Beavis. I have been waiting for you. I am fire.
But to me, what's even cooler is that the version of the Beavis and Butt-Head Do America on Paramount Plus actually restores the moment in the desert scene. This time though, Beavis does say fire, and he says it fully. It's like such a little fun Easter egg for fans to remember how controversial that word really was. Here's a clip of that. But besides all that, despite all these changes that they've made during that time, it still hangs the big question in the air. Was it really fair to blame Beavis and Butt-Head for what happened? Did the show have any real influence on Austin Mesner's actions, or was it just an easy target for a much bigger issue? Let's find out. In 2008, 15 years after the tragic fire, Austin Mesner dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. He revealed that he had never even watched Beavis and Butt-Head. I'm gonna repeat that again. He revealed that he had never even watched Beavis and Butt-Head. He says, "How could I? My mom was a drug addict. We couldn't afford cable." Neighbors even backed up his story, confirming that the Mesner household didn't have a TV or cable at the time of the fire. This revelation completely shattered the narrative that had pinned the blame on Beavis and Butt-Head. The idea that the show had influenced Austin's actions now seemed like nothing more than a made-up story based on pure speculation. But even with this new information though, the rumors just didn't fade away. There were reports that were even questioning Austin's mom about whether she had been asleep when the fire started or if she had left her kids alone to go on a date. In 2011, despite Austin's denial, Darcy stuck to her original story in an interview with the New York Times. She insisted that after the fire, Austin stopped mimicking the cartoon characters' iconic laughter. The fire chief asked Austin where he learned to play with fire, and he said Beavis and Butt-Head. Fast forward to 2022, Mike Judge weighed in on the incident during an episode of the Apple podcast Basic. He reflected on the tragedy and how the misinformation had taken on a life on its own. As he says,
it's awful, first of all. It's hard to, like, my understanding, and you can look this up. It was at a trailer park, and this woman had left to go on a date, a 5-year-old and I think 1.5-year-old alone, and like child abandonment, basically. Kid was playing with a lighter that she'd left out, and he started a fire and it burned the place down, and the younger one died, and I guess the police were questioning her, and she just said, well, he's been watching Beavis and Butt-Head, and that became the headline that they were looking for, is Beavis and Butt-Head caused the death of a kid. It turned out they did not get cable at this trailer park.
Despite the fact that the family didn't have cable at the time, this key detail got buried beneath all the sensationalized headlines. Judge summed it up pretty clearly though.
Yeah, that little tiny correction came out later. He'd likely never seen it. It was just she was trying to say something to
To deflect.
Yeah, to deflect.
This whole revelation flipped the story upside down, which proved just how wrong the media really got the story. While the truth finally came out, the damage was already done. The fire didn't just take a life, it left permanent scars on the family that really never healed. This tragedy here was not just a lie that spread like wildfire, it was how it tore a mother and son apart. So let's take a closer look at what happened between Darcy and Austin and how this tragedy really followed them through the years, leaving this a lasting impact on them. The relationship between Darcy and Austin never really bounced back after the fire. In a 2011 New York Times article, Darcy admitted that their bond had been strained ever since. As Austin got older, he started resenting his mom, especially because of the guilt tied to his sister's death. Eventually, they lost touch entirely. Even when Beavis and Butt-Head came back in 2011, Darcy still couldn't let go of blaming the show. She said she didn't think it should be on TV again, repeating to the New York Times that she held the show responsible for losing two of her children, one to the fire and the other to the guilt. She was quoted saying, "I don't even think that the show should come back to TV." This whole situation goes beyond just a controversial Beavis and Butt-Head episode. It really highlights something bigger from the 1990s, which is how quickly people were blaming media for influencing kids' behavior. You know, the whole TV made them do it kind of thing. And trust me, I know, I get it, because this was also a big topic of conversation while I was growing up in the early 2000s. But what's interesting is that the controversy really didn't just fade away. It more so sparked a larger conversation about how media reacts under pressure. It became a perfect example of how things can spiral when the public starts pointing fingers and looking for someone to blame. So with that being said, in my opinion, Darcy Burke, Austin's mom, used the show as a way to avoid dealing with her deeper issues within her own parenting. Now, we can't really know for sure what made Austin set his bed on fire, but blaming it on a TV show just really don't quite add up to me. There were other factors at play too. I want to be clear, I am not trying to assert so much blame on this woman. However, we really do have to look at certain facts to assess the truth of the situation. And trust me, I get it, I understand that parenting is difficult, but there is a certain level of care that really goes into parenting as well. So with that being said, as I mentioned earlier, Mike Judge speculated that Darcy might have been preparing for or even out on a date when the fire occurred. Additionally, Austin spoke out about his mother's struggles with drug addiction, which understandably could have impacted her decision making as a parent. So when you zoom out and think about the bigger picture, it's clear that the challenges Darcy faced played a really big role in what happened. And it is heartbreaking to reflect on the fact that a young girl's life was tragically lost in an incident that might have been preventable under different circumstances. And it really does make you think, how did Austin even get his hands on a lighter in the first place? Sure, it's easy to point the finger at the media, but at the end of the day, responsible parenting and supervision are key in situations much like this one. As for MTV pulling the episode, Mike Judge wasn't happy about it. He even said it was an overreaction, and I get it. It was just a tragic situation, but did pulling the episode really fix anything? I think MTV acted out of fear and the need to protect their brand, but that doesn't mean it was the right call. Which, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I can understand that because there was a tragic incident that occurred. But at the end of the day, Beavis and Butt-Head was created for a younger adult audience, not children, and it was a satirical show. It was never meant to inspire real-world actions. In Austin's case, even though he had never seen the show and there was really no real correlation between Beavis and Butt-Head and the fire, the nature of this incident brings a broader conversation about the importance of parental supervision. The whole tragedy just really much left a stain on Beavis and Butt-Head's legacy that they really, to me, didn't deserve. And it's a cautionary tale about rushing to conclusions about knowing the full story. But in Beavis and Butt-Head's case, thankfully the situation didn't really put that much of a stain on its legacy because the show is quite still as big as ever. The Messenger family story isn't just about a show, it's about bigger issues like neglect, responsibility, and the difficulty of facing painful truths. And Austin's letter and out of never even watching Beavis and Butt-Head really just show how quickly a story can be twisted into what people want to believe. But with all that being said, those are just my thoughts. What do you guys think? Do you think the show was just an easy target, or did it even deserve the criticism that it did? Let me know in your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're still here with me, thank you so much. It really means a lot. I am really working hard to make it on YouTube, especially with the content that I personally find interesting, and I know this journey really isn't gonna be an easy one. And staying consistent can really be tough, especially with everything that's going on in my life. But I really don't want to quite give up just yet, and I definitely want to push forward. But anyways, I'm ranting now. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye.